this was a team I thought that our fan base could really get behind and be proud of.
Welcome into the Scarlet Shootaround podcast, following the beat of Husker basketball. Here are your hosts, Blake and Mike.
Wisconsin ends Nebraska's 5-game winning streak in Madison, 88-72. Hello, everybody, and welcome in again to the Scarlet Shootaround podcast. My name is Blake, here with co-host Mike. And Mike, this is a tough one. For whatever reason, the defense decided to not show up here, but Huskers played great offensively. And we'll dive into kind of how that breaks down here in a minute. But again, apologize. I am currently in a ballroom in San Antonio this time. So again, causing more technical issues, and mic quality may not be great. Video quality especially, I know, is not great for those on YouTube, but we always make this work as best we can. So, Mike, let's get into this Wisconsin game a little bit. What, in your eyes, went wrong here, and what did you take away from this tough loss?
Yeah, that's a tough question. It's kind of like where to start. Coming into the game, we noted that in Wisconsin's 3 losses, they were out-rebounded, and Huskers couldn't pull that off this game. In fact, the Huskers didn't have a whole lot going on anywhere as far as the paint goes, whether it's rebounding or scoring. They got doubled up, in the paint, 36-18 by the Badgers. So pretty tough as far as that goes. We mentioned how you mentioned the defense wasn't really there. Which is kind of disappointing after we were talking about, Fred's talking about consistency and all that stuff during the Indiana game. And it just seemed like maybe they came out a little flat. It's hard. It's always hard on the road, especially with, not a ton of rest. But I felt like the energy just wasn't necessarily there on the defensive end. And that's not to say it wasn't there for the whole game. There were plenty of possessions where it was, but it just seemed like we couldn't string together enough to make a big difference in the game. I will say, though, I saw a lot of fight out of the guys. Even in the second half, it would have been easy to give up down double digits at halftime, but I know they kept trying to chip away. They kept getting the lead down to 9 or down to 10, 11 points, but could never just really get that one big stop and get a chance to break into single digits and maybe get some momentum. It seemed like Wisconsin always had an answer for what the Huskers had as far as a run goes, which it's tough to see, but they're a really solid squad. We said that coming in, and I think they're definitely top 3 in the Big Ten. So no shame in losing on the road to a team of that quality.
And to your point, Mike, Nebraska gave up a huge run early in the game from the 12-minute mark to the 8-minute mark, going down 19-5 in that stretch. A large enough gap to where Nebraska really, especially on the road in a hostile environment, it's hard to recover from that. That being said, Mike, the offense was fantastic. Huskers shot 49% from the field. They shot 46% from 3. They had 16 assists to 12 turnovers, so maybe a little bit high on the turnover side, but great assist numbers. Tominaga had a great game, obviously having defensive draped all over him again, going for 17, 0-2, went 7 of 10 from the field, 3 of 6 from deep. He's continued his offensive momentum, at least from the scoring side, Mike, and you think he's here to stay now?
Yeah, I said last episode I wasn't ready to anoint him being back or whatever, but to see it back-to-back games now, he definitely was the one lone bright spot, I think, on offense. Obviously, Mast put up 16 himself, but he did on 14 shots, so not necessarily efficient. He had shot 7 threes compared to Tominaga's 6, so not sure that's the offense we wanted to end up in, but that's, again, credit to Wisconsin for forcing us into uncomfortable situations like that. But, as far as Casey goes, I think it was a great game, super efficient, shooting 70% from the field, 50% beyond the arc. I think at that point, I think we need to try to get the ball to him more. I understand it's tough. He's always going to have guys draped all over him. I'd like to see maybe some more back cuts from him. He does it every now and again, and I don't know if it's the passing is lacking or what, but it just seems he hasn't found as many this year to help maybe give him some room. But that being said, I know he's obviously a major focus of every opponent's defensive game plan. So tough to get opportunities, but I think we need to work a little bit harder at that.
Wilcher also came off the bench again, going 6-1-0, shooting 2 or 4 from the field, hits 2 of his 3 3-point attempts. He's continuing his shooting hot streak, Mike. He's up to 42% 3 shooting on the year, so excellent development there. Bryce Williams goes for 10, 4, and 6, shoots 3 of 9 from the field, makes his 1 3-pointer out of his 3 attempts. A slightly inefficient game there from Bryce Williams, but very noteworthy that he had 6 assists.
Yeah, his passing was really good this game. But as you said, a little inefficient from him. Normally, we're used to seeing him be far more efficient. And I think there are a couple times in the game where he maybe had a mismatch with a smaller guy on him, and he kind of got a chance to back a guy down or maybe get to his spot and just missed a couple shots that we're used to him seeing, around the elbow or mid range, which normally goes down. So. A little bit of a tough shooting night for him. Can't say the same, for Wisconsin. They shot lights out. But as you had said, though, Huskers shot well as a team, shooting, I think it was 49% from the field. I think Coach Hoiberg would be happy with that any game, but just tough. They ran into a buzzsaw on the other side with Wisconsin.
And you talked about the defense. Obviously, offense, we'd take that kind of performance, especially on the road, anytime that we can get it. But Wisconsin, Mike, shoots 55% from the field, 50% from deep on 3 points, and 69% from the free throw line. And they have 18 assists to 8 turnovers. So we knew and talked about coming in, Wisconsin takes really good care of the ball, as the assist numbers show. They pass it well. They don't turn it over. And they shot out of the lights. They shot the lights out of the gym for this game, Mike. It really is as simple as that. I think part of that can be attributed to maybe a lack of Husker defensive attention, but a lot of that, I think you just have to give credit to Wisconsin for really taking the lid off. And they had not shot these kind of numbers since their first game of the year against Arkansas State, where they scored over 100. So, you have to praise Wisconsin for what they were able to do to us offensively. And Hoiberg talked about the Huskers defense and maybe how it may have lacked a little bit in this one.
Defensive edge obviously wasn't where it needed to be tonight, and give Wisconsin credit for that. They came out, they were moving it, they had a lot of purpose in their offense with their cutting. They exposed us on our double teams with the double flood, and the guys were getting right in front of us. And it's something we worked on the last few days after what happened in Indiana. They were just throwing it up to the front of the rim to wear or renew and getting shots at the rim, and that's what happened in that first half. It forced us to go solo in our coverage in the post, and we were still giving up threes. I think they were making 6 a game, and they hit 13 on us tonight, and give them credit for that. They stepped up with a lot of confidence and knocked down their shots. Offensively, we played good enough to win, and this is a tough team to play against from that standpoint. We shoot almost 50% and almost 47 from the three-point line. And those numbers should be good enough at least to give yourself a chance to win. But when you give up 59% in the first half and 55% overall, you're not going to win very many games or put yourself in a position to win many games.
And Fred, I think, really nailed it there, Mike. When you give up that many points and that kind of efficiency on defense, you have to be either super efficient on offense to match it, which is going to be a huge ask anytime you're playing on the road, let alone at the Kohl Center. But this team is really going to be based on what kind of effort they bring on the defensive side every night, because this team has some shooters and they can, get to score up to maybe low 90s on a really good night. But defense is always going to be this team's calling card.
Yeah, and I think Fred has alluded to that, focusing on the defense and their consistency. And I think a big portion of it for me, I think Jawan Gary, for me personally, is probably one of our best defensive players. He can guard pretty much anybody on the floor, but he was in foul trouble all night. He only played about 18 minutes. He had 4 fouls and just never really got a chance to get it going. In fact, he ended with no rebounds. So a tough game for him, and I think that kind of hurt us on the defensive end a lot. We were in foul trouble quite a bit, especially in the first half. I think at one point the fouls were six fouls for Nebraska to 1 to Wisconsin. And we talked about that. They don't foul, coming in the game. We talked about that, but just ended up being in a tough spot for us, and a little bit of foul trouble with some of our main guys, Mast and Gary. Or Mast didn't have too much trouble, but Gary, had a lot of foul trouble, and we had to go to Alec then, and the rotations were a little off maybe of what we wanted, so that hurt us a little bit. But just a tough game all around on the defensive end for everybody.
At the end of the day, though, Mike, I will say I don't think this detracts from our goals. We'd always talked about in this first 3-game stretch trying to go 2-3 ideally, but the fact that we got Indiana, I think Wisconsin on the road is always a little bit of not so much a lottery ticket, because I think it was very winnable, as alluded to by the 6-point spread. But I don't think a loss here changes anything about this team. Obviously, it's, as maybe some of our fan base that's porting over to basketball from football a little bit might be a little bit discouraged because they're not used to, losing and things like that necessarily. But if you're a Nebraska basketball fan, I'd hope you're used to it by now. But this loss doesn't change anything in the long term for Nebraska. It would have been nice to have a guaranteed Q1 win on the road. But, Mike, we rebounded with a really tough game against Purdue coming up, and we'll get into that after we hear what the viewers thought about this game.
So, Husker fans, let's hear from you.
So, Mike, let's get into some of the things that our viewers thought, starting with Huskin Fanatic. He says, watching Chucky makes me want to do unsportsmanlike conduct, which I think it's very well publicized how much our fan base is not a huge fans of Chucky Hepburn. And then Nebraska Cubby says, this team still has heart, but if we want to win, we can't lose the rebounds. And, Mike, you kind of alluded to it. Losing Gary, I think, is huge on that. But Wisconsin, in their own right, is a very good rebounding team.
Yeah, they're a big team, and they're coached well, and they box out well. There wasn't a lot of opportunities for many loose balls or many guys getting a run to the rim on the offensive board opportunity. I think we only had 3 the whole game. They had 7, so just tough overall. And like you had alluded to, like we said, losing Gary definitely hurts with that. But yeah, it's tough against a team that big. They're pretty good at securing the rebound. They do it as a team. They box out well, and it's a real tough go. So it was always a tough ask, but yeah, definitely needed to win the rebound. I think if we wanted to have any potential, and we got out rebounded by 6, I believe. So it wasn't the end of the world, but you can't be minus at the end of the day against a team like Wisconsin.
Huskers Oracle says, tough spot for the Huskers. Wisconsin had 4 days of rest. We traveled on 2 days of rest. That said, no excuses. Wisconsin would admit that was their best game they've played, and we still did not go away until very late. This changes nothing for our goals. And a lot of that, I think, alludes to what we've kind of already talked about. But I don't think it can be understated that the way the schedule worked out in this one, again, emphasizing what he said, not to make excuses, but traveling on 2 days rest, it's tough. It's tough. And it's one thing if you're going to play like a lowly – whatever non-con team. But when you're going into the Kohl Center on short rest, Fred even talked about it. I don't have the quote readily available, but he said that the team looked like they played a little bit tired in this one and they practiced tired. And I think some of the travel can be alluded to that.
Yeah, and I think also the game before, as we alluded to in the previous episode, Wisconsin's kind of just a better version of the Indiana team we played. So it's a lot of, we talk about it a lot. Big Ten's kind of bully ball. A lot of focus in the paint with the bigs in the front court. So going up against 2 teams that like to do that definitely takes a toll on the body, I think. And I think that was pretty evident. Yeah, it just seemed like the guys didn't quite have the energy, and not for lack of effort, but I think the tanks might have just been a little empty for them on that short turnaround.
Power Huskers said, I think Wisconsin got a little lucky today. The ball was not falling our way rebound-wise. Nebraska will not make it easy in PBA, and he makes a great point. I would highly suggest that Wisconsin will not shoot the same way they did at the Kohl Center here in this one. I imagine the PBA crowd will make sure to create a very, very tough environment for them when they come. I want to say it's early February or end of January.
February 1st. February 1st.
February 1st.
Yep.
I think that's a very big one to circle for Husker fans and look forward to a really good home crowd. Jacob Wright 27 then says, very good Wisconsin team. Would have liked to be a little bit more competitive, but we have a great opportunity to bounce back Tuesday against number 1 Purdue. Gary did not have a single rebound, and watch out for February 1st. So again, a lot of the things that we kind of talked about, but I want to focus on Gary. When we talk about the X factors of this team, I think CJ Wilcher making points off the bench is a big one. I think Mast being healthy, point blank period, is a big one. But Gary, if he gets into foul trouble early, I think we've kind of seen now that after this being the first opportunity of this kind of occasion happening, when Gary gets in foul trouble, it hurts this team immensely because we just don't have somebody that can fill in and bring to the table the same things he does.
Yeah, he plays it like I said earlier. I think he's probably our best defender, being able to defend 1 through 5. And I think, losing what he does on the defensive end specifically, and also on the rebounds. He crashes the glass, he gets up and can snag some pretty impressive boards. So losing him in foul trouble is pretty tough. Through all this negativity, it's a kind of doom and gloom. I do want to give a shout out quick to Eli Rice. I've always been a big Eli Rice guy, if you want to go back and watch some earlier episodes. But, he got 8.5 minutes. He made another 3. It seems like that's what he comes in and does is make a 3. But, he was 0 on his plus minus. So Pretty good overall, and I thought his defense was really, really well. He had a steal and an assist, so pretty well-rounded outing from him. Just trying to look for a little positivity here, but yeah, I love to see that though.
Whizbang Hoops said, I'm going to keep being the annoying Casey guy. He scored 12 points and missed one shot in the first half. He got 4 shots in the second. Rink Mast shot more threes than Casey. Casey had an extremely efficient 17 today. Get him shots. What are we doing? And that had a lot of traction on it as well, a lot of favorites on that tweet. But I think a lot of what it attributes to is Casey succeeds when he takes good shots within Casey's realm, right? That's obviously a relative term. But I think we have to be careful about saying every single time we possess the ball, we need to give it to Casey and let him shoot, because a lot of the times, and as we've seen throughout the entire year, all of the defenses we've gone up against absolutely cover Casey with a blanket, and they'll face guard and they'll tug at his jersey. And Fred has talked about it even in his press conferences.
Yeah, no, you're spot on with that. And I think obviously the Twitter replies are right. I think we did especially in this game need to get him more shots. It's hyper efficient, 70% from the field, and just standing there, that just, to me, that means you didn't shoot the ball enough if you're shooting at that clip. So yeah, I would love to see that from him. I think they had Max Klesmit guarding him for most of the game, and I think Klesmit only ended up shooting 1 or 2 shots on the offensive end. I think his whole goal that game was just to try to clamp down Casey and take a break on the offensive end if they're Wisconsin. So, and that's maybe something that a lot of teams are kind of focusing on doing, is just, have a guy that's focused solely on the defensive end for a game and just try to put the brakes on Casey. But yeah, I agree. I think we need to get him more shots. I agree with you though. And I don't want it to be every possession needs to be a Casey shot. He doesn't need to get 25, 30 looks a game, but he's good for a contested 3 every once in a while, a couple times a half maybe, but still want to see it within the offense, want to be open and good looks.
Rygolf 1975 says, third road game ran into a buzzsaw. Whiskey never scores like that. They made every 3 they shot, and it really did feel like that watching it. But he continues, says, it is what it is. Move on and focus on Purdue. We are still good. If we win the games we should and maybe upset 1 or 2 of the big boys, we'll be good. And I think that's really always kind of been the formula, Mike. A lot of our road games, especially the quad 1 tier ones, your Purdue's, your Wisconsin's, your Michigan State's, although we don't play them, your top tier road games are all lottery tickets. You go into that and you never want to expect to lose, but you go in there saying if you lose, it's no big deal, because it's nothing that can really hurt your resume unless you stack up, 10 plus quad 1 losses. But those are pure opportunities. You can't go into that expecting to win. So what's very, very important though, is that we need to protect our home court anytime we do have those big opportunities come to PBA.
Yeah, and I want to say generally home teams win about 70% of the time or something like that in college basketball. So it's tough to win on the road in general, whether it's a good or bad team. And to do it, as I said earlier, against a team that's top 3 in the Big Ten, it was always going to be a big ask. But Wisconsin shot lights out, to their credit. They shot better. I think, as Fred had said in his quote, they make 6 threes, a game all season, and they made 13 in this game. So a heck of a performance from them. You just got to tip your cap sometimes if the hoop looks like an ocean for them and they can just toss it in. That's just how it goes. That's basketball.
Big Ten Gabriel says, not time to hit the panic button, need to look more competitive earlier against Purdue, which I think is very key. I think we need to start that one out hot. And then rounding it out, Scotty MC33 says, about what I expected point differential wise. Good news is that it'll be a couple of weeks before the bandwagon fans will watch again. Most important stretch coming after the Purdue game. And again, I think most people that are, I hate to say educated necessarily, but the serious Nebraska basketball fans kind of understand that this is not a huge deal, but we definitely need to come out stronger out of the gates against Purdue.
No, need to have a quick start. I think being home will definitely help with that. It's kind of a quick turnaround again. It's a Tuesday game after a Saturday game, so not a ton of rest time for the guys again, but hopefully being home will help with that. And hopefully the crowd can help energize. I do agree, though, the stretch, Purdue's obviously a massive game. Always going to be a quad 1 win no matter what. They're one of the best teams in the country. So, but after Purdue, we got a big lineup of, Iowa, Rutgers, Northwestern, Ohio State. We can make a little run in there, win a couple, and it'll look a lot better than it does right now. That's for sure. So as I've been saying, though, one game at a time. We're on to Purdue now, and yeah, like you said, hopefully we can get out to a hot start and maybe make something magic happen.
And I missed one, so I got to make sure I get in here. Palm Swayze says, we came out flat defensively and Wisconsin refused to miss. Offensively, it wasn't horrible. We just got to protect the ball better, and we need to protect the home floor. And again, kind of walking right into what we just talked about, home floors where you need to make your hay in the Big Ten, and you try to steal 1 or 2 on the road as a lottery ticket.
Yeah, no, it's everything that we've been saying. Just going into this next one is a tough matchup. It is what it is, and that's like I said, that's basketball. It's a game of runs. It's a game of tough losses sometimes like this. As you said, it's tough to lose 16. We should be a little bit more competitive, but that's how they go sometime. And got a big chance to rebound here against a great team in Purdue.
So that rounds up everything that you guys said. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Scarlet Shoot Pod. If you want your comments to be featured on the show after the Purdue game, we always post a tweet asking Huskers what were your thoughts. Make sure you reply to that too. Again, have a chance to be featured on the show. So, Mike, on the other side of the break, we'll get into the Purdue preview.
You are listening to the Scarlet Shootaround podcast.
Okay, Mike, let's get into Purdue. But before we do, we are sponsored by Tax and Business Consultants.
Yeah, this segment, our preview, is brought to you by Tax and Business Consultants, providing all the tax, accounting, payroll, and consulting that your business needs. They partner with you to specifically tailor strategies suited to you and your business. Committed to positive client outcomes since 1961, they've been relieving stress related to taxes in all forms. Their offices are located in Blair, Columbus, and Lyons, so give them a call at 402-426-4144 or visit their website, www.tbc.tax. T as in Tominaga, B as in Bryce Williams, and C as in Coach Hoiberg.tax. Once again, that phone number was 402-426-4144, so give them a call. They say, go Big Red.
All right, Mike, so let's get into Purdue. This team is really, really, really good. Not anything that our listeners don't know, but they are 14-1 on the year, 3-1 in conference. KenPom has them at number 2. The net rankings have them at number 2, and the AP poll has them at number 1. They are the preseason favorite in the Big Ten. Notable wins for them: they've beat number 4 KenPom Tennessee on our neutral court 71-67, number 3 Arizona on our neutral court 92-84, and number 7 Illinois at home 83-78. And that was, I believe, their prior game before playing us. Notable losses: they only have one, and that was to number 67 Northwestern on the road 92-88 in overtime. They rank second in offense on KenPom, 9 in defense, and tempo 179th. So, Mike, this team, obviously, they have quality wins. They've only lost one game to Northwestern, who, as we speak live right now, Northwestern's in the process of beating Michigan State at home. Who knows if it'll end that way, but Northwestern, obviously, kind of a trap arena over there. But what do you take away from this Purdue team from a 1,000 foot in the sky?
I mean, they're one of the best, if not the best team in the country. I know they've played, you mentioned some of their notable wins. They've played a grinder of a schedule. Xavier's a top 40 KenPom team. They beat them. They beat Gonzaga. They beat Marquette, who's another ranked team. So they've played a lot of really quality teams, and they've only managed to have the one loss in overtime, like you mentioned, against Northwestern. So obviously very good team. You mentioned second in offense, 9th in defense. It's not just that they're efficient offense, they're efficient all over the place. They make threes at nearly 40%, 11th in the country on 3-point percent. They make, a lot of assists on their field goals. They share the ball well. They assist on, 63% of their makes. So it's tough to lock it down. Obviously, that's all that being said without, reigning Naismith Player of the Year, Zach Edey. I think he's trying to be the first person to go back-to-back since I think it was Ralph Sampson won 3 straight in 81-83. So it's a heck of a team. They've got shooters and they've got big men and they got everything you want from a basketball team. They have a lot of continuity. They got a lot of guys coming back. It's just a tough matchup, and excited to see maybe the Huskers can shock the world with this one.
And, Mike, they have played the 4th toughest schedule in the country, and they're 14-1, which says a lot about, obviously how good this team is, if just trying to put metrics to it. They're really talented in playing defense without fouling. They are 7th nationally in free throw attempts per field goal attempt at only 22.6%. They're a young but sneaky veteranish team. They return a ton from obviously what was a great team last year and number one seed. They have a lot of sophomore key players highlighted by their point guard, Braden Smith, who's a 6-foot sophomore, averaging 13, 6, and 7, shooting 48% from the field, 48% from three. He was on the Big Ten all-freshman team last year. And he's a huge threat offensively, both from three, inside two, and he can pass it extremely well as well. Like I mentioned, averaging 7 assists. Another key sophomore they have, Fletcher Lawyer, a 6'4 sophomore, averaging 11, 2, and 2, shooting 40% from the field and 40% from three. He was honorable mention all Big Ten last year, and he had a stat line of 27 and 6 against Arizona. And as you mentioned, Zach Edey, the 7'4 senior, reigning consensus player of the year last year, Big Ten player of the year. He's really an all-time player in college basketball. He's looking to cap off his career with a really good senior season. So, Mike, let's just call it what it is. If we beat Purdue, it's going to be a shock the world moment. This team is unbelievably good. They're battle tested. They're veteranish. They've got the best player in the country. Where do you see a pathway for the Huskers to win this one?
Yeah, I think the one thing that you look at Purdue, and the one thing that really stood out to me is they're prone to giving up threes on defense. They're only 258th in the country on defensive side for 3 points attempt per field goal attempt. So that being said, they hold opponents to only shooting 29% from three, which is 22nd in the country. So they give up the three, but the teams they play so far haven't shot it well. If I'm looking for a path forward for the Huskers, I think the Huskers attempt the most threes out of anybody in the Big Ten. So we're definitely going to be there doing that. The big key to me is if they can shoot it at a pretty good clip, 35, 36, 37%. If we do pull a Wisconsin and hit 50% from three, something like that, crazy, that would go a long way to making this a lot more of a winnable game.
And Mike, again, they're so well-rounded. They're seemingly not weak anywhere. They're good free throw shooters. They're a top 15 team in the country from three. They're a top 50 team from two. They're top 20 in the country in offensive rebounding. The only thing they don't do, as you mentioned, is they will let you shoot the three. And obviously part of that is because I think teams opt to shoot the three when you're looking at Zach Edey inside, number one, who will block his fair share of shots to begin with. And number two, they don't jump passing lanes. They don't force a ton of steals. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily game impactful, but Mike, I think the key to this one is going to be the Huskers, plain and simple. They're going to have to make the threes that they're given. They've got to be efficient from three. I'd almost predict that they have to shoot at above 45% from three to even have a chance in this one. And they're going to have to find some kind of way to either get Zach Edey in foul trouble or play really, really good defense on their three-point shooters and try to let them chip away from two.
No, I think you're spot on. And there's only one loss to go look at what maybe you can say Northwestern did right in the big win. And you're spot on. In that game, Purdue shot 26% from three. So if we can kind of clamp them down on the 3-point arc and make them, have to work inside out. Obviously, I think Edey had 35 points that game. So definitely a big game for him. But if their shooters don't hit, that's big. In that game, Northwestern did indeed shoot 50% from three, and they had three guys go off for 20 or more points. So if that's the recipe to beat Purdue, it's a pretty tough one to replicate, but I think the Huskers have the ability to do it. Obviously, Wilcher's been shooting pretty well recently. Tominaga's been shooting pretty well recently. I think Bryce Williams is always, a chance to go off. And, it depends how they guard Rink Mast. I know he didn't shoot great from three last game, but if he can at least get some respect from Edey and maybe try to make it a little bit easier inside, might carve a pathway to the Huskers have a chance to score inside and outside.
So Mike, Ken Palm is projecting an 82-73 Purdue win. Torvik projecting 82-73 and 83-72 Purdue win. So let's project the spread at Purdue -10. Where are you feeling on this one?
As always, this is not financial advice. Having said that, they're a fantastic team. I think that's fairly obvious at this point. They played Friday, we played Saturday, so they're having an extra day of rest. Obviously, they do have a day of travel, whereas we're at home, so that might be a little bit of a factor there. I want to say PBA can maybe make a difference. I know the crowd should definitely be into it when the number one team in the country comes to your arena. There's no reason not to get into it. But I have Purdue probably winning by about 12 here. I'd say probably 85-73 is kind of what I'm seeing. I think we just have a tough time Zach Edey, as you mentioned, he's probably the best player in college basketball. He's going to get his. He's averaging a double-double on the year, so that's going to make it tough. And then their shooters are much improved. They got a couple guys shooting over 40% from three. If they shoot like they have the whole season, it's just tough sledding, no matter if it's home or away. As we mentioned, this team has won all over the place. They've won at home. They've won neutral courts. They're well experienced and they know what it takes to win. So tough sledding for the Huskers. I got Purdue by about 12.
I'm actually going to take the points with Nebraska, Mike. I'm going to take Nebraska plus 10. I think this is an opportunity for the crowd and the sixth man, if you will, at PBA to really, really influence this game because Purdue, like you said, they've traveled neutral court. They played in the Maui Invitational and won that. But when they went to Northwestern, obviously Northwestern, maybe not a big arena necessarily, but a true road environment, Northwestern found a way to do it. And I think the key here as well is Nebraska players and coaches are going to realize that this is such a big opportunity for a statement win that will be on your resume for the rest of the year and especially will be highlighted come March when it's Selection Sunday. So I think Nebraska is going to give them their absolute best shot. I do not expect a Creighton letdown in this one. I think Purdue maybe plays a little bit more to what Nebraska wants to do and working more into the post as opposed to just purely shooting threes. I think the Huskers have done great in bounce back situations this year. You talk about how they came off after the Minnesota game, how they came back after the Creighton game and played really good basketball. Obviously, Minnesota game only the first half, but when challenged, they've done well. When their backs against the wall, they've performed well. And I think a lot of that you have to attribute to the coaching staff doing a really good job. And I think Nebraska's coming off a very hot offensive game, Mike. If we can shoot these same numbers that we shot against Wisconsin, we talked about over 45% from three and over 50% from the field. I think we're going to have a shot here. I'm not calling for a win, but I'm predicting a very close game here. I'm final score going to project an 82-77 Purdue win, and it comes down to the last 2 minutes of play and free throws. So that's where I see this one. So on the other side of this, we'll wrap this up and get you out of here.
You are listening to the Scarlet Shootaround podcast.
All right, Mike, so we have a huge opportunity here Tuesday night, 8 o'clock. Make sure we get that date right because last time we got flamed for it on Twitter for having the wrong day. But Tuesday, 8 o'clock tip here at PBA. Mike, are you expecting a big crowd here? And what do you think the atmosphere is going to be like at PBA here in a couple days?
I think going forward, we'll just have to say the date, not the day of the week. So this is a game on January 9th. You can look up when that day is. But no, I think the crowd, obviously, like I said, when the number one team in the country comes to town, no reason not for the crowd to get involved. Every time I go to a game, it's always a good show. There's just one caveat: if they could figure out when to play Sandman properly, it would just be a much better experience. But it's a great experience. I think the crowd will definitely be into it. And I think if the Huskers get off to a hot start and get the crowd into it, get everybody on their feet, it's always a great thing, and maybe gives them a shot here in this game. It's going to be a tough sledding, as I had mentioned, against a very quality Purdue team, but excited to see what the Huskers can do. I have faith in this team. I think they have the talent to beat anybody, and I guess we'll see if that can come true on Tuesday.
So again, everybody, make sure you follow all of our socials on Twitter at Scarlet Shoot Pod, where we are most active, tweeting tournament updates, metric updates, any kind of injury news that may come out, and any news pertaining to the podcast, as well as releases, features, and guests. Find us on YouTube at Scarlet Shoot Pod as well. We upload video podcasts normally a day after podcast release on podcasting platforms, and on Instagram at Scarlet Shoot Pod. We'll post little documentary, maybe things as we pop up on there if we go to road games or whatever it may be. So just a fun little follow there. Make sure you follow the show on Apple and Spotify so you never miss an episode. And let's go out and let's shock the world and beat Purdue and storm the court. For myself and Mike, this is Blake. Go Big Red.
Go Big Red, baby.